Hello and welcome to Local Writers Read, part two of our May event, which is the beginning of our 2021 virtual season. Thank you to anyone who tuned in yesterday to watch part one. If you missed that, it is up on our Facebook page and it will be live on YouTube in a couple days at the latest, along with this part as well. I'm Josh Gauthier, and for those who are not familiar, Local Writers Read is a literary reading series featuring Maine authors and occasional guests, working across genres and styles in varying stages of their careers. And our theme for this month is memory and yesterday. So in a few minutes, we'll be hearing two pieces from two fabulous Maine authors speaking to this theme. But before we get to that, I just want to give a quick shout out to Claire Guyton, who is the co-organizer and co-founder of Local Writers Read. Unfortunately, Claire had something come up last minute, so she won't be able to join us. But I know she sends all her encouragement, and this series is very much her brainchild as much as mine. And we also want to say thank you to Quiet City Books in Lewiston, who in normal times is the host of the series, and even in virtual pandemic times is very much a supporter and encourager of what we do, and also just the arts in Central Maine as well. So we're very thankful for all Quiet City does. And a special shout out to the Lewiston Public Library for also co-sponsoring the series. The arts are just wonderful, and the series has been a great way to connect with writers in the literary community in the area. So we're very grateful to be able to do what we do. And we're looking forward to a new season and a whole bunch of writers, familiar faces, some new voices coming in. And so month to month, it's going to be a really good time this year sharing these stories. So without further ado, I will introduce our two readers for today, and then I will hand it off and let them share their work. So up first, we have Renee DeCamillis, who is a dark fiction author and editor, lyricist and poet, and a lifelong musician and singer, and a tree-hugging hippie with a sharp metal edge. She is an author of the psychological thriller and supernatural horror novella The Bone Cutters, which came out in 2019 from Eraserhead Press. And her short fiction has appeared in the Wicked Woman anthology from NEHW Press, Dead Man's Tome, Siren's Call, and the Other Stories podcast. And her poetry has been in the Horror Writers Association Poetry Showcase Volume 4. She also has her first comic book forthcoming from Phi 3 Comics, and she is an active member of the Horror Writers Association. She's also a former gravedigger and can get rid of a body fast without leaving a trace, and is not afraid to get her hands dirty. She lives in the woods of Maine with her husband, their son, and a house full of ghosts. And along with Renee, we have Lisa Mayer, who performs all over the world as a Yiddish singer and klezmer violinist, and shares her bite-sized memoirs at readings throughout New England. Her credits include the Huffington Post, the National Jewish Forward, PBS, and NPR. She's from New York City and now lives in Auburn near lakes, mountains, moose, and Starbucks. And she started Auburn's mainly Jewish storytelling festival. And so both Renee and Lisa have read with us before. They're excellent writers, excellent performers, and storytellers. So I'm very excited to hear what they have to share with us today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Renee to get us started.
Well, thank you, Josh, and hi, everyone. Today I've chosen to share a short story of mine titled The Unemployed Neighbor. I kind of call it an oldie but goodie. It appeared in January 2018 on the Other Stories podcast. And then in February 2018, it appeared on Siren's Call e-zine, issue 37 for Women in Horror Month. Celebrating Women in Horror Month. So, but anyways, here we go. This is The Unemployed Neighbor. The unemployed neighbor never mows his lawn. He owns one of the most high-tech riding mowers in the neighborhood. The mower sits under the unemployed neighbor's dilapidated back deck, covered with a blue torn-up tarp with grease stains all over it. Behind the mower, hanging on a rack on the outside wall of the house, are a number of gardening tools: manual rototiller, rakes, shovels, pitchfork, hose. But the large raised garden bed in the unemployed neighbor's backyard is filled with dandelions and moss carpeting. The wooden garden gate archway is cracked, splintered, and crumbling, and the swinging gate door hangs crooked from only one working hinge. The carved daisies on the upper curved border no longer look like flowers. Their painted purple petals have all broken and fallen to the ground. The unemployed neighbor has a two-car garage, but he only drives a sidecar motorcycle, his one running vehicle. His cycle, a relic of a Harley, is a hodgepodge of mismatched parts pieced together from junkyards and fellow local bikers. The only original part of the unemployed neighbor's cycle is the seat. It's a two-seater, original from the day he bought the Harley, brand new. The passenger seat of the unemployed neighbor's two-seater Harley is worn and faded, but I never see him with a passenger. A beat-up 1975 Camaro sits up on cement blocks in the unemployed neighbor's side yard. The hood is always propped open, held up with a thick tree branch. There is no motor in the unemployed neighbor's old beat-up muscle car. The unemployed neighbor walks with a limp. He's a tall, slim man with monkey-like arms. The long, ringlet-filled salt and pepper ponytail and silvering beard shows his age. He's in his mid-50s. The unemployed neighbor never wears shoes in the summer. In the winter, he wears sandals with mismatched socks. Sometimes, the unemployed neighbor wraps plastic shopping bags over his sandaled feet. I see this happen on the slushiest winter days. In the spring and the fall, the unemployed neighbor pedals around and around the cul-de-sac on an old, rusty women's bicycle. It has a white wicker basket attached to the front of the handlebars that is covered with purple petaled daisies. When I see the unemployed neighbor pedaling around in circles, he's always wearing flip-flops and fuzzy purple leg warmers. The unemployed neighbor always stops at some point in the middle of his pedaling circles to pick up pebbles from the side of the road and places them in the basket. I always wonder what he does with all those pebbles. The unemployed neighbor's makeshift mailbox is made out of a bright yellow plastic kitty litter container, duct taped to a purple painted PVC pipe stuck into a mound of gravel and rocks. But the unemployed neighbor doesn't own a cat. He owns a dog, an old black dog with only 3 legs. I've never heard the dog bark. Every day at dusk, rain or shine, the unemployed neighbor takes his dog for a walk. I see the two limping and hopping around and around and around that cul-de-sac a number of times. One evening, I found myself on my front porch, bored and alone, and watching them circle that cul-de-sac over and over again. I decided to count the number of circles they made. 16 times is what it had amounted to. Curious, I set out to count their circlings every time I noticed them out on their walk. Every time I count, the number is always the same. 16 over and over and over again. It never varies, not when I've observed. Every night, after walking his dog, the unemployed neighbor drives to the nearest liquor store, sometimes on his Harley, sometimes on the rusty women's bicycle with a little red wagon trailing behind. He always buys a case of O'Doul's and 16/5 of vodka. When he arrives home, he turns on a bright floodlight. The floodlight is attached at the upper back corner of his sagging roof, and it illuminates a shooting range in his backyard. Then he stands with a case of O'Doul's on the ground beside his feet, a .45 in his hand. He takes aim and shoots at the vodka bottles all lined up on wooden sawhorses along the tree line at the back border of his yard. Often, I notice over his left ear a purple petaled daisy. The evenings that I see no daisy over his ear, there is a purple glass vase filled with purple petaled daisies beside his case of O'Doul's. The unemployed neighbor keeps to himself. I never see him have company at his house, and I never see him go out to socialize. The town is small, but I never hear anyone mention him, except to complain about his unkempt lawn. This is what I overhear from the old women of the community gardening club in the local diner where I order my daily takeout. I like to watch the unemployed neighbor while I eat my daily diner meals. Unemployed neighbor watching takes the place of dinner conversation since I dine and live alone. It provides me much satisfying entertainment. Tonight, while eating dinner, I doze off. I awake with a start, the sound of shattering glass. I look out the picture window, expecting to see the unemployed neighbor shooting at vodka. His floodlights are all off. I stand up from my recliner, the only seat in my living room, and feel sharp, piercing pain once my left foot hits the cold, creaky floor. I look down and see a spiderweb splintered picture frame rotting on the rotting hardwood floor. I pick up the picture and brush it off and sit back down. My foot is dribbling blood, but I cannot feel the wound. In the photo, which has a smudge at one corner, I see a middle aged man, tall and slim, with monkey like arms. His hair hangs in a ringlet filled salt and pepper ponytail over one shoulder. His beard is raven black. Beside him is a 16-year-old girl in a purple sundress. She is sitting on a purple bicycle with a white wicker basket attached to the handlebars. All over the basket are purple petaled daisies. Around the girl's head of sable hair is a halo, a ring of woven together purple petaled daisies, fresh out of the lush garden behind father and daughter, and food colored by the girl's mother for a birthday present. In the girl's dainty hands is a 45. Beside her bare feet, upon the grassy ground, rests a torn open box and crumpled wrapping paper. Across her and her proud daddy's faces, smiles brighter than his shooting range floodlights, smiles that will never return. That photo. In the foreground of the photo sits a rectangular picnic table covered with a purple Sweet 16 tablecloth and a freshly baked homemade birthday cake created by the girl's mother. The cake is two-tiered with white frosting and a border of purple petal daisies. Those smiles, those smiles will never return. Not since that day. That day, drunk daddy cleaned Sweet 16 Sandra's birthday gift gun and accidentally shot her dead. That photo, such a great photo. Had I not smudged frosting across the corner of the lens, the aroma of fresh baked homemade cake will never grace my kitchen again. The end. Lisa, what do you have for today?
Well, I have something very different, but I applaud your unbelievable ambiance creation. I was
Oh,
there.
thank you.
I was really there. And I don't
Thank
think
you.
I'll ever look at purple flowers the same way. Well, what I write is true stories. And this one I'm calling Belly Up. My parents went out every Saturday night, leaving my little sister Dina and me with a succession of babysitters because they never wanted to come back. Not my parents, the babysitters. In those days, my parents went out to the movies and then to Shimon's Kosher Pizza Place or to the Queens College Auditorium where my father was a math professor and they had great artists like Itzhak Perlman and Murray Pariah. Sometimes their synagogue, the Young Israel of Hillcrest, had a social night, and back then Even in Orthodox synagogues, women wore hot pink or peacock blue silk sleeveless dresses with low décolletage and long gloves. And as soon as the rabbi headed for the door, the band swung into a waltz. My parents were and are affable, smart, and game, and although they had lots of friends in the neighborhood, they mostly went out with my Aunt Jenny and Uncle Max. I think it was my Aunt Jenny, my father's older sister, and my absolute idol of whirling dervish womanhood, who first mentioned the Cafe Baba. Apparently, it was a few neighborhoods away, it was kosher, and it was a nightclub. A nightclub. And not just a nightclub with a belly dancer. The night they went, the four of them, I waited till they finally came back to our kitchen for a nightcap of red rose tea and Entenmann's. I was relentless with questions. What did the belly dancer look like? What did she wear? Did she dance near you? Did any of you blush? I had recently found My Secret Garden by Nancy Friday in my friend's basement, and my 11-year-old hormones were activated. The Cafe Baba was absolutely the most risque thing I had ever heard. I was desperate to go. And then a miracle. It was Bubby Weintraub's birthday, my grandmother, and she wanted to go out with the ganze Mishpacha, the whole family, to a fancy place, a place where you could wear your minnick coat to, a special Platz that she had been hearing about every day on the Jewish radio station WEVD, a place called the Cafe Baba. I was in. My sister Dina and I dressed fancy, the best of the junior teen department at Alexander's. My mother wore a champagne jumpsuit and Aunt Jenny blue silk and a glamorous blonde fall. Bubby wore her minnick coat. The place was a storefront, but once you got inside, you parted the curtain and everything was dark and exciting. I remember waiting forever through the steak and the Israeli salad for the belly dancer. Apparently she was dessert. Finally, a drum roll, the beaded curtain parted, and there she was. She wore many red feathers on her head, and not too many red feathers on the rest of her. She flipped her impossibly long black hair all around and wrapped herself in a red see-through veil. Then her hips danced directly over to Uncle Max, who tried to tuck a $50 bill into the low waistband of her skirt while she undulated and made it hard for him to tip her. Meantime, my little sister Dina and I could not stop giggling. Years and years later, when I was married and we had a best friend couple of our own, Lenny and Trina, we had a thing that each of us got to pick where we wanted to go for our birthdays, and the other three couldn't complain. I picked the Cafe Baba. I remember that night. In addition to the belly dancer, there were a pair of costume dancers direct from Vegas who contorted themselves into unutterable positions. Trina kept marveling how they slapped themselves together and held on. Lenny and my husband Robert tipped the belly dancer well and often. I didn't hear much about the Cafe Baba after that. The rabbis in New York were making everyone more religious, and women had no patience with feathers. It was the 80s. They were wearing power suits with shoulder pads. But I remember the look in my husband's eye that night, and I decided what I was going to do for his 30th birthday, 5 months away. At the time, my advertising agency was on Madison Avenue, across the street from St. Patrick's Cathedral. My window looked over Leona Helmsley's Palace Hotel. As a creative copywriter, I had a 2-hour lunch. Shoshana's belly dancing studio was across town on 8th Avenue, $8 a class, new session starting Wednesday at 12:30. There were about 6 of us in the small mirrored studio waiting for class to start. From the beautiful and leggy looks of everybody, I realized I was the only non-professional dancer. But then the beaded curtain parted, and there was Shoshana. She floated into the room, in sparkling blue, a figurehead on a ship, her veil like a sail behind her. Her impossibly long black hair glistened in waves. Her smile lit you up. Her breasts were pure womanhood, honey-dew round. Her hips curved from a tiny waist, her belly button like the end of an exclamation point. And then she started to dance. We were transfixed, even the leggy pros. This was otherworldly. This was ancient. This was biblical. When she came to a stop, the silver coins on her belt shaking their last sighs, we burst into applause. Well, maybe it was only me, but I had never seen such perfection. She showed us how to imagine a figure eight, written on its side on the floor beneath our feet. She showed us how to move our hips, tracing the figure eight, each time the same way. After a few times, I risked a glance in the mirror. I hoped it would look better in costume. Over the next few Wednesdays, we learned how to walk while making figure eights and how to turn around slowly, all the while keeping your smoky eyes on the audience. Then I found out I had to go to Las Vegas for a business trip. The account I worked on was the GTE Yellow Pages. This was way pre-Google. I was going to interview a guy whose business did very well from advertising with the Yellow Pages. But the trip had me in Vegas on a Wednesday, and I didn't want to lose my mojo. And then I realized the client was the freaking Yellow Pages. When I got to the hotel, a local Yellow Pages waited for me. Flip, 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 and there it was. Vegas Sensations Dance Studio, classes every day. I called, I booked a private lesson, and before I met my client for dinner, his successful business was called Tonerland. He sold toner for copiers and printers and actually spoke in a monotone, although he did pick me up in a Jaguar. I taxied over to the studio. My teacher was an actual Vegas showgirl who wore feathers professionally, and it was a fun lesson, but she had nothing on Shoshana. Next week I was back, and Shoshana showed us the camel and the reverse camel. It's kind of a vertical belly shrug. The camel starts with your belly sticking out, and then your breasts follow the belly, and then your neck and head follow the breasts. The reverse camel starts with your butt sticking out and everything else following. They're very effective moves. You could do them fast, you could do them slow, and it looks fabulous if you can do them while you're turning around. When Shoshana did the camel, it looked like her parts were disconnected in the best possible way. At this point, I had been at this in total for 5 months. My husband's birthday was approaching, and I asked Shoshana if she knew where I could buy a belly dancing outfit, and if she could choreograph a special short dance for me to delight the birthday boy. Apparently, the studio also had a small store, and she opened it for me after the lesson. If you've ever been to the Arab Shuk in Jerusalem, you know exactly what it looked like. Silky caftans, brass teapots, hookah pipes, and there was a small but dizzying selection of colorful costumes with skirts that slit all the way up both legs, see-through veils, and jingly-jangly belly dancing belts with matching headpieces made of silver and gold coins. Of course, I went all out. The next week, we had a private lesson, and she showed me what she had choreographed. She told me to have my husband sit in a chair in the middle of the room so I could dance all around him. I played the part of my husband for the tutorial, and as I watched her get closer and closer to my chair, I knew that if I could do it even 1/10 as well as Shoshana, we were going to be in for a wild night. On the day of Robert's birthday in the late afternoon, I brought our little son Zachary for an overnight with Grandma Rita and Grandpa Sal. Our foursome with Lenny and Trina went out to dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, the cake, the singing of the happy birthday, yada, yada. I was hot with impatience and cold with panic. In the ladies' room, I told Trina what I was planning. She could see how nervous I was, and her goggle-eyed comments like, "You are a crazy woman, and my husband is going to be so jealous," didn't help. She did, however, kindly manage to get her big talker husband out of the restaurant and into their car in record time. She did glance back at me with one more shake of the head. Robert and I got back to our apartment, and I thought, okay, showtime. I have a kind of present for you, I said, shoving him into the big upholstered chair that I dragged into the middle of the living room. I'm gonna go into the bedroom for a second. When I tell you, press the play button on the stereo cassette player, then go back and sit in the chair. I lowered the halogen to barely. Oh boy, he said. I went into the bedroom and took the costume out the back of my closet. I tried to keep the jingly jangly coins quiet as I fastened it over the black swishy skirt. The black bra pumped me up to, if not quite honeydew, then a respectable cantaloupe. The headpiece came down perfectly to right between my eyes. I spent 1 minute redoing my smoky eyeliner. I grabbed the veil and called out to the living room, "Please press the button now." Shoshana had even made the cassette tape for me. When I heard the opening notes like little bells, I walked out, strong and determined, my arms high up on either side, holding the sparkly veil up like wings. I stopped about 5 feet in front of him. I looked directly into his eyes, which bulged with shock. Then I lowered my head and wrapped myself, veiled myself in the sparkly blackness and posed totally still. My husband was totally still too. And then the music really started up, and so did I. I slowly released myself from the veil. My hips started to move in that figure eight, and I saw him draw in his breath. I turned toward him slowly, cameling, reverse cameling, my eyes smoky fixed right on him. I got nearer and nearer. I danced on one side of him slowly and steadily, coming around to the other, silver coins jingle jangling. And then, as the music swelled, I leaned in for an all or nothing shimmy shake and teased him with the barest touch of my veil. Let's just say that when the music stopped, the Sultan was chasing Scheherazade all around the apartment. For years and years afterward, almost any kind of music turned on my inner Shoshana. I would be a guest at a wedding. The band would start and my hips would start, and all the men would start coming over asking me to dance. And after that, the ladies would ask me to show them a few moves. It was a little weird, but ancient power is ancient power. Now it's years and years after that, and stuck in the house like everyone else because of this farkakta awful COVID, I decided to clean out my closet. The black sparkly veil has a little tear, and frankly, if I even wanted to try on the jingly jangly belt, I would have to add a few extra coins. I guess I could give it all to my little daughter and as a costume for Halloween. No, she'll probably giggle. No, I'm going to keep it. I folded it up, put it back. Why? I don't know. Can't really explain it to myself. I've had, poo-poo-poo, so far, a successful woman's life. Wifehood, now wifehood again. A glorious ongoing motherhood. A fancy career in advertising. I traveled around the world playing music. My face was on posters. I owned a creative summer camp. Did some fundraising. And now I'm a published writer, a teacher, and a quasi-respectable Rebbitzin, a rabbi's wife. But those are the highlights. If you add up most days, most of our lives are about schlepping a zillion bags of groceries, cooking a zillion dinners, putting in and taking out a zillion dishes from the dishwasher, and doing a zillion piles of laundry, helping with a zillion hours of homework and book reports, cleaning out a zillion pounds of kitty litter. So, I ask you, so what if once in a while I like to peek at that jingle jangle in the back of my closet? So what if once in a while I try a little figure eight? So what if I think, okay, maybe not so much anymore, but yeah, I used to be dessert. Yeah, once for a little while I could shimmy shake and make them all crazy. Thank
Lisa,
you.
Thank you. And Renee as well. It is always such a delight to listen to both of you. And so it's really fun to have both of you on the same day today and just to get these back to back. Like we said, two very different pieces. Last night as well, I read and Sarah Twombly read with us, and it was two very different pieces as well. And it's always really interesting to see how people find a way into the themes that we pick. We've been using themes since we started this series, and people never fail to disappoint in just the surprising ways that they bring different stories, poetry, essays to these ideas that we pick. So we're going to move into a bit of a discussion, and I have questions for both of our readers, but for anyone listening along today live, feel free to drop comments or questions or thoughts or anything into the Facebook chat. I am watching there as well. There's a slight delay between what we see here and when things show up on Facebook, but if you have any questions, we will definitely try to get to those. But Lisa, I'm going to start with you. With one of these. And before I get to the question, I just want to say I've heard you read a number of times now in different essays, and really performances even. I know that's very much a passion of yours. But I'm always just struck by how you take these moments, which is so often what personal essay is about, is finding moments and elevate them into such just magnificent stories. And they take on such resonance in that delivery. So I want to say that piece.
Thank you.
And I have a question for Claire. As I said at the beginning, Claire was unable to be here, but I'm going to bring her question to this nonetheless. So she says that your pieces always unfold for her like a good girl talk session over coffee. Do you think of yourself more as a storyteller or an essayist, or is it some combination of those two things?
You know, there was an old Jewish story about the greatest rabbi at the time years ago in Europe. You know, the greatest rabbi and his disciples were talking to him about who's going to get into heaven, who will merit the world to come, who's going to make it, who's going to make it. And he wouldn't give them an answer. And they were badgering him for weeks and weeks. And finally, they were strolling along the street with him in the midst. You know, he was in the midst and they were all surrounding him. And he sees on the street corner across is like a little jester, a street magician. And he's doing tricks and doing things. And the little kids around him are laughing. And he looks at his disciples, this big rabbi, and he says, he's going to merit heaven. And I remember that's exactly what I live to do. I live to make people laugh, to make people feel, to make people happier. I do. As I get older, I realize that's what it is. So I don't know what I am, essayist, right? Whatever it is, if I can make you laugh, if I can make you happier for just a minute, that's what I want on my tombstone. I just want to make people happier of all ages, whatever I can do and however I can do it.
I like that. That's such a good way to put it. And I think for artists of all stripes, that's so often what we're trying to do, whether it's happy or feeling or making people think. Yeah, so seeing that effect and seeing our words touch other people is such a remarkable thing.
It's very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's why we're here. It's why we do what we do. It's certainly not for the money. So, and so Renee as well. And I did just want to say for my part, for yours as well, your work is always magnetic, I think is what I want to call it. Like there's something that just draws you in to your stories and your novella. And I can't put my finger on exactly what it is, but it's very striking, and I hear it every time you read. And today, especially, there was a poetry to it as well, the repetition of the images. So I am curious a little bit, and there's kind of two parts to this, but can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for this piece, and then kind of how did it take shape? Because it's not a traditional narrative like point A to point B story. It's very much like descriptive, but then it takes on a larger form kind of as the pieces unfold. So just what was that development like for you?
Well, it actually had started as a writing exercise on showing, not telling, and kind of using what you see in a character, like the character development, and within the character development unfolds the story in just what you're seeing in that character. Um, and Yeah, and it was it was started in a writing class I was taking in my MFA, and we were given an excerpt from a story called The Unmarried Sister. I mean, the unemployed neighbor, the unmarried sister kind of gave me inspiration for the title. I don't know. I'm like, okay, what type of person, because I live in a small town, I'm like, what kind of person would I maybe observe in my neighborhood or something, or in my town? And there are a lot of curious characters in my town. It's a mix of we got a lot of bikers in my town. We've got a lot of people who, you'll see that they're home a lot, or they might be, unemployed due to, disability, or maybe they were hurt at work and they can't work anymore. But it was about, observing someone's curious behavior and wondering, like, what is the reason for what they do every day, and so I started playing with that, and as it developed, it's funny because then I brought my story to a workshop, and I realized someone had asked me, like, who's watching this person, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know who's watching them. So I had to sit back and think, like, okay, someone's watching this person and seeing all their actions, but this person watching them knows an awful lot about this person, like more than you could know than just being a neighbor and seeing them every day do their thing. So the whole part of discovering who the narrator was, kind of was an afterthought. Like, wow, I played with the idea of maybe the narrator was the maybe the ghost of his daughter, but then that didn't work. And then I thought, oh, what's even creepier than that? It's the mother watching him and getting some kind of satisfaction out of seeing how miserable he is after what happened. But at the same time, she's just as miserable and stuck in a rut in this cyclical grief and depression as he is, so that it really kind of, I thought once I decided on who the narrator was and then fleshed out that ending, it just gave it a lot more power, than just somebody watching somebody they don't know. So that's kind of how it developed.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I know I've talked about in the past how I very much write long form, but I'm always struck by in short stories how that twist and that resolution of a well-delivered short story takes what has been happening and then it all of a sudden expands it into something so much more. And yeah,
I also, Josh, not to interrupt, but I also grew up on O. Henry stories. And so those are the ones with the surprise. And I found out I think you'll appreciate this, Renee. I'm sure you might know. He spent a lot of time in jail, O. Henry. So he did a lot of his writing from jail. So he had that, the high and the low there. But I think that you can really pack the biggest punch with the smallest fist. I mean, when you said that and the smeared of the cream, I mean, it. As Josh said, the repetition, the poetry of it all, and it kind of lulls you. And then you hear that shattered glass, like you really hear it when it happens. So that was very powerful to me.
Thank you.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah, that last moment just lands so effectively. And I always find it interesting with first person narrators who are aside how much you learn through their observations, which you were saying was exactly how the story plays out. Is we're watching one person, but we're learning very much about another one.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Renee, also. Do you very often put yourself, I mean, obviously you weren't the narrator of this story in real life, but do you, when you write, because I write fiction also, and don't you have to sort of put yourself as the narrator? Like I have to make it pretend that it's true, that it happened. Otherwise I don't see it as clearly. And sometimes it
Yes,
takes
I
a while.
do.
Yeah,
I do. I mean, like, I often say that I am every character that I write. I mean, I really am because I'm creating them, so they're coming from me.
right,
And often when I'm writing too, I mean, just trying to figure it out, you have to put yourself in that character's skin in order to really convey their story. And it's kind of like method acting. You have to become the character to
right.
really get their story across. And
I
that's kind of
find
how I see it.
that because I find I don't do the same as you because if I'm writing obviously about what happened to me then that's different, but
Mhm.
when I'm writing fiction, like I write a lot of middle grade to really to delight my kids, but but I almost always base my characters on real people, either that I've met, knew, was related to, imagined. I need to have that feel like it really happened even if it's fiction. So I don't know. That's my process. But with you, I mean, you don't seem to need that. You seem to be able to just have that creepy eye over everything. It was
Well,
really
I
effective.
honestly, a lot of my characters are a mix of people I have somehow come across. I mean,
Hmm.
none of my characters are completely modeled after somebody I know or somebody I have known or has been in my life, but they're often little pieces of different people I've had some kind of experience with. So in a way, um, it's I mean, I talk a lot that, a lot of my fiction is masked autobiographical, if that makes any sense.
It
There's a
does.
lot.
It's like what Josh said before. Why these people have these stories. You always tell your own story over and over and over again. And I find, like you said, you've heard me, I know you've obviously heard me read before, Josh, and there are always different things about my life or whatever, but it's the same thing. It's always still me with the same set of, needs or anxieties or whatever I have. And in a way it's like self-analysis, but I don't think of it like that. I think of using it to propel what I want the audience to either laugh about. And usually this is actually unusual for me because I almost always have a very sad ending or a kind of a poignant ending. This is the first time, well, for me, it's a little poignant because like I can't fit into that damn thing. So for me, this was a very sad ending, but, but, but it's almost always that because I think at some level you just keep telling the same story over and over again. And you are the same person throughout your life, even though you change a little, but you still have something. So I find that you end up just being a narrator all the time of the same kind of narrator of every story.
Yes, no, it's funny that this is coming up right now because actually last night we were talking about how our own experiences find their way into fiction. And Sarah, who was reading yesterday, her novel is partly like autobiographical fiction, and then mine is about battle unicorns, but has some of the same themes that come in, even though it's not the experiences. So yeah, we were very much talking about over and over. Writers in general very often, I think, end up retreading that same ground in new ways and just kind of mining deeper to I think a lot of the times we're just trying to understand things for ourselves and then it finds its way into fiction that very luckily other people connect with as well, which is
Yeah.
always fascinating.
That's
David
so
said, oh,
true.
sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, it's so true. Like with this, like I talk about writing is like it's my therapy. Like it's how I work through problems. It's how I work through fears. And a lot of times the story I don't like people will ask like where did the inspiration come from? Like you did, Josh. Like while it started from that writing exercise, but a lot of times I don't really see where the whole idea came from until after it's completed, and then I go back and read it again, and I'm like, then I see how it fits into my life. I'm like, holy crap. that's really what I was working through.
Mhm.
And that's in the story. And I didn't even realize it while I was writing it.
Right,
But like that's my
right,
life
right.
in a
You know, and
in a twisted way.
right, and I'm older than you, and I'm going to tell you something else that's going to be great because it's the only good thing about getting older is that sometimes the story needs to have happened maybe when you were 8 years old, but then something when you're 40 or 45 something reminds you. Like my one of my very first stories that I got published happened when I was 8 years old, the story, but I couldn't write it or process it or whatever until I moved here to Maine only 7 years ago. And I planted a peach tree. That was the story with my crazy neighbor, my crazy cousin who came up and took the peaches off my tree when I was 8 years old. And I connected it. So that was like many, many years, but it was the same story. And I find
Hmm.
that that's what happens now. Like I just took that belly dancing costume out of the closet, right? I haven't worn that thing in a very long time, but it came back and it was a connection. So I think that's another thing about life, like what you said, Renee, like you tell the story, but you're different a little bit each time. So the connections make the story more powerful and you work through your life that way.
Yeah.
Like I have a kind of now little, I guess like a timeline of things that happened to me.
Mm. And writing, it's cheaper than therapy.
Right. I don't want to share. I don't want to waste my stuff on a therapist. I'm going to put it
Right.
there.
I really, and Lisa, I admire that you write, nonfiction about your life because a lot of people will hear some of the things I've gone through and they're like, wow, you need to write a memoir. I'm like, no, I'm not putting my dirty laundry out there for people. I'm
But
going to
it's not.
mask it with fiction.
Right, right. So then it's what I say asked you. So the fiction is your truth. But that makes a lot of sense. It's very hard to make things. I don't know how Josh does it with unicorns. Like I could not write about unicorns because I don't have any. I mean, I could write about a horse that I rode or was scared of or whatever. But I don't. I'd have to make it that it was my unicorn or he. I don't know. He grew out of a big zit I had or something. I don't know. Just something to make it real for me. And so in my nonfiction, it's almost things that happen to me, just like you said, that you masking them.
Mhm.
But I have a question for you, Renee, just in general, because you're such a pretty young woman and like horror, like why are you writing horror? Like I'm
I
scared
love
of you
horror.
now. You love horror.
I love horror. It's got a lot of emotion
Oh yeah, yeah, but it's
and there's a lot of horror in the world. I've lived through a lot of horror and I don't know, I love it. I was telling Josh before this started, I've been doing the horror convention StokerCon all weekend.
oh
So watching
wow.
a bunch of other, horror panels and discussions about horror literature and it's my thing. It's been my thing since I was a kid and I don't know. I think maybe because it mirrors a lot of what I've lived.
I'm
I don't know.
sorry.
All
You
I can
know,
do is laugh.
Yeah, well, you're doing great with it. My kiddos, I teach fifth grade now. It's my first time really having like a class. It's the greatest thing. They're my tribe. Anything I want to do, they do. Yeah, sure, Miss Mayor, we'll go. It's hilarious. And two of the kids actually, because we're going to be our last unit is a fantasy unit. I've been waiting all year for this, and two of the kids are doing horror, and
Awesome.
they're 10, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm like afraid to see it. But, they're illustrating, they're doing the whole shebang. And
Great.
I didn't expect it because most of the kids are doing fluffy unicorns. And then there's these two kids and I'm like, oh no. But I see that it's a very powerful, there must be something that resonates with them. And
Yeah, well, I know, like, I've tried to write more uplifting, happy things, and it sounds forced and fake. So I just stick with what I know.
yeah, yeah,
The dark.
right. What right? That's okay. This is a great
Yeah, yeah.
series, Josh and
Like, I wish
Claire.
I could write something like, but like, I wish I could write something like what you shared. It's up. It's more happy and I was laughing and it made me smile and it's not my thing. I can't do it. I try. I
Well,
can't.
thank you. You got me another coin into heaven. I'm going to try for that. But you know what? But you know, it's like anything else. It's like you can do it. You just have to, just kind of get a little outside yourself. I mean, I'm not going to write horror. It's too far for me. But I do, I just wrote my first mystery. And there's some
Ooh,
horrible, I've never written a mystery before. And there's a pretty horrible things that happen, right? Bad. And, and I guess at some level, I kind of wrote it like this, like I could see the image and I described it very tersely because I couldn't take it. And then I
right,
moved on, but it had to be there. I mean, it was a horrible thing that happened. So I didn't shy away from it, but I didn't linger.
right.
Yeah, and it's so the literature of horror and why people are drawn to it is so fascinating. And I think it ties to, like we've been saying, where we process so much of the things that we've been through and thought about and experienced. But just recently, I saw someone talking about horror and specifically how nice horror authors tend to be. And one take was that it's because we're so often willing to name our fears and kind of face them, which I think is kind of a fascinating take. Because I know this is slightly off topic, but Bracken McLeod is a horror author. And he was talking about he's got a forthcoming novel. It's a home invasion novel that he modeled off of his own home, and so writing it like is very much confronting like fear of the worst case scenario, but the words on the page are so powerful in the end result and kind of working through really just some fundamental questions about what are we afraid of and who are we in moments of crisis. And so yeah, I think horror is one corner of that, but then Lisa, even with what you do and looking at, like you're saying, these moments that take shape over the course of a lifetime and those connections that come out.
I'm so glad it's funny. So my kids know me very well, obviously, and I write stories for them really to delight. And one of the ones that I wrote, it was about a fiddle camp, thing. It was like the whole mystery at fiddle camp, whatever. And at, towards the end, there's this little boy who is drowning. Like stupid kid runs into the lake, whatever. And my kids, we were sitting there, I'm reading it out loud to them. And my little girl, Charlie, looks at me. She goes, I'm not going to worry about Peto because I know, Mommy, that you could never write anything bad that would happen to him. And sure enough, he's saved. But like it was because I had to have some, the thing bad because it was part of the story, but I couldn't, like when Stephen King says murder your darlings. No, I can't do it. I'm never going to be that good a writer because I can't really let go. I love everyone. So it's hard. It's hard. So I think that's maybe why I can't do what you guys do because I
Well, it's
can't.
so true. Like in the book I just finished, it's out in submission world right now, but
Woohoo!
there's a character that I just fell in love with her, and my beta reader, after he got back to me, he goes, "You are an asshole. How could you kill her?" I said, "She
Oh,
had to go. I loved her too much. Had to kill her off."
I
That's what
should learn. I should learn from that. I can't write. I mean, my kids know that it's going to have a happy ending. Although I am working on a darker one because you know what my little girl said? She was reading this story and she goes, it's not intense enough. And I realized that that's also a power. So you can do something intense that's not horrific. But
Mhm.
can I ask you one last question it's just about process of getting our work out there? How, I'm also in submission land with a few manuscripts. I just sometimes feel like I want somebody to pat me on the head and say, Lisa, it's going to happen. I've gotten short pieces published, but I have like, a couple of really big ass books I want. And it's like, really, it's like, how much time do you spend doing the submission when all you really want to do is write more? Like what's your, like, is it a 90-10? Is it 50-50? Like, how much time do you spend on submissions?
It takes me forever just to get one submission ready to send out because you've got to follow the guidelines
I know,
to
I
a
know.
T or
Yeah,
they won't even read it.
right.
I mean, it's very important to follow the guidelines. So it'll take me forever just to prep one submission, but it's a constant struggle. I mean, and even just trying to promote the work that's out there so it'll get to more readers. it's a constant battle, and I'm constantly pulled in different directions. Like, do I spend more time looking for more places to submit my work, or do I just keep writing? And people are like, you're not a writer unless you're writing. And it's like, there's so much more to being a writer than just sitting down to write. It's a constant struggle. I can't really tell you like
Yeah.
percentage I spent on each, because after my book came out, I found that I spent so much time trying to get reviews and trying to get readings and trying to get into bookstores and trying to get this and that and the other. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this many months have gone by and I haven't produced much in my writing. So then I'm like, I'm spending too much time on promotion. I got to work on my next thing to get more work out there. So it's a constant,
Yeah.
it's a constant battle.
Yeah. I mean, I actually, it's funny because I'm a performer. I'm doing a few concerts. Like I do concerts of readings. So I'm doing one next Thursday. I'm doing one. I'm going to New York. I'm doing one. I'm here. I'm there. So that's kind of been, but it's not in a book form. It's just I get up there and I read. So it's, but that and it's but thank you for sharing that, because it is part of the process of being a writer, that you can't just sit there and things, they sit there and wait. What's her name? The great cartoonist from New Yorker. Oh my God. Ross Chast, right? Ross Chast. She's the great cartoonist. Anyway, she has this. She once made some sort of comment like, "Yeah, well, I sit in my house in Connecticut, and every Friday the truck comes, the UPS comes, and he takes my drawings to the New Yorker, and there they're published." And I'm like, holy cow, what a sweet thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just sit here and write and you can take it all and be published in the New Yorker, like, wow. So but she took a long time to get there. And I haven't been, I've been a professional writer since I'm younger, but I have not been like this kind of writer. I work for an advertising agency. That's very different. Um, but this is also part of it. And it's humbling. It's humbling.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're already published. You're going to do more. It's going to happen. I know, we just have to keep at it, right, Josh?
Yeah,
Look,
and that's
you
just
got,
keep submitting.
right, see, keep submitting, you got to play produced, right? We just got to keep doing it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No,
That's the horror of this.
Yes.
it is. Yeah, so much of it just comes down to that perseverance. And it's funny,
Mm-hmm.
this past year I've been doing even extra writing events, and over again I hear people just talk about like they took the right opportunity at the right time, and that was when it happened. And half the time it was the opportunity that they didn't even think was going to be the right one, but they just kept putting themselves out there, kept trying things, kept offering the work up, and then one day just
Yeah.
it's that right moment and they get the production, they get the publication, they make that connection, and things move forward. So
Well, it's just like that saying goes. You're like, you don't know if you don't try, and you don't fail until you stop trying. I mean, you're not really failing just because you get 15 rejections or however many rejections. It's like it could be that next submission you send out that someone's like, yes, I love this. But if you give up, you're never going to find out,
Right. I mean, right. I keep thinking of that moment in Stephen King's On Writing, which is one of the best books on writing I've ever read. That
Mhm.
image of the nail that he bangs into the wall. And then when the rejection letters back in the day, when there weren't emails, would weigh that thing down and it crashed to the floor. He just banged in another nail. It was, right. So things like that really sustain us.
Yeah, because the more rejections you get, hey, you're trying. You're sending
Right.
your work out there. That's
That's
proof you're
true. That's
trying.
true. That's true. And I want to thank, you, Josh and Claire, for doing this, because it really gives us a chance to perform and read and get more, just to do it is very, very important for us. So thank you
Yes,
for
thank
that.
you.
yeah,
Thank you,
you're welcome.
Josh.
And
And Claire, wherever you are, Claire.
I know.
yeah, and we are right at 4, so I think that's a perfect note to kind of wind down on. But Renee and Lisa, thank you, and to Sarah from last night as well for helping us kick off this new season. Like I said, it's so much fun to be able to do this. We have Gary in the comments is a friend of the series and longtime viewer, saying a funny story and a creepy story. Great way to spend some time on a Saturday afternoon. Thanks to all of you. So Gary, and to anyone else who's listening, thank you for being here. The readers and the viewers are really why we do this. Without all of you, it would just be us running Zoom meetings by ourselves. And so this really makes it worth it.
Just open up the circle a bit. It's okay.
Exactly. So if you enjoyed this and you want more, tune in this Friday afternoon. LA Arts is doing their virtual art walk, and Local Writers Read is spotlighting another main writer of some poetry this month. And we had a really fun time filming that video. It's some great work, so check that out. And then we will also be back. Let me make sure I get these dates right. June 18th and 19th will be our next Local Writers Read weekend. The theme is adornment and disguise. And so we've got another great set of readers, and we are looking forward to bringing some more just great storytelling to you all. Maine has wonderfully talented people, and it is an honor to know them. So thank you to Claire, to Quiet City, Lisa, Renee, everybody. That brings us to a close today. This will be live, so feel free to share with anybody who will enjoy it. Lisa, Renee, any final words?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
And thank you to all the listeners.
Yeah. Have a good night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.